So I accidentally hit stop instead of pause. So I'll put an attachment answering the question, essay and puzzles. That's what it will be called. It's about 55 seconds long. I totally encourage you to watch it. Okay, next one. In the part where the boxes were drawn, I kind of got confused halfway through. I was wondering if it even mattered what order the letters were put in, if it matters what box they're in. To me, it just kind of seemed like letters were going down in alphabet order into the boxes. So they are in alphabet order, and the reason I did that is because I'm counting 1 to 26. There are 26 letters in the box. So that's, for me, the easiest way to make sure I have all of my pieces there. None of us know the alphabet out of order. We know the alphabet in order. So I use the alphabet in order. You can use numbers just the same. 1, 2, 3, 4 would be SOAP. 5 would be your title. 6 would be your grabber. 7 would be your framework. 8 would be your thesis. 9 would be topic sentence number 1. 10, 11, and 12 would be your body paragraph. 13 would be your transition, 14 would be your new topic sentence, and so on. 27, you'd still hit 27. I don't really care how you count it. I'm looking for the completion and accuracy of the content. This one says, I like to say that I'm learning a lot in class. However, that sounds bad. In lecture 3, you, Professor Benesh, said that our thesis is at the bottom of the introduction. Now, my previous teacher said the thesis can be anywhere as long as it's prominent and incorporated. I'm confused about whether the thesis can be anywhere in the intro paragraph, or you prefer from now on to have the thesis at the bottom of the introduction, not the paragraph. Yeah, can I reply to that? What teachers? Your 9th grade English teachers who have a bachelor's degree and a teaching credential? Maybe. I want the thesis at the end of the introduction. And there is a question in here that asked me what I meant that it may not be at the bottom of the introduction first paragraph. It might be at the bottom of the introduction. Imagine, if you will, that I need 10 pages. You do not. I'm using it as an example. That's 13 paragraphs. And so I'm going to do that math by saying 1, 2, 4-item thesis, 3, 4, and a conclusion. And I'm going to do a 3-item conclusion. That's 2, 2, 2, and 2, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13. That gets me to my 10 pages plus my works cited page, right? If we were in class, I would say to give me a topic. So somebody screams out, election year. Okay, well, we are in election year. So here's my thesis, right? Bottom of my introduction, not the bottom of a paragraph. And my thesis is going to be that the voting population should have knowledge of the how democracy works and why their vote matters. They should have knowledge of the candidates. They should have knowledge of, what do they call them? I forget now. I know you guys are screaming it at me, aren't you? The proposals, proposed law differences. And because I'm doing a 4-item thesis, I'm going to say the stakes. What are the stakes? Okay, so that's my thesis. And so right here, I'm going to say they need to understand democracy. And my next thesis is, my next topic sentence is going to say they need to know something about the candidates. And my next topic sentence is going to say they need to know something about the initiatives. There's another word for it. I forget right now. And then they have to understand the stakes. What's at stake if they do or don't vote a certain way, right? And then I'm going to look at the red states and the blue states. And then I'll transition to candidates, red states, blue states. And I'll transition to initiatives, proposals, whatever those dumb things are called, red states, blue states, and then I'm going to talk about the stakes being high within the red states and the blue states. And my introduction is going to be about the history, maybe, of the U.S., and I'm going to look at maybe the Electoral College. I'm going to look at the Senate and Congress. And then I'm going to look at this idea of voting power and what actually is democracy. And I'm going to say for a democracy to function, the population who is voting needs to know about A, B, C, and D. And then my conclusion is going to talk about the now of November, the then of January, and the next election 2024. That's a 13-paragraph essay that I just wrote. And when we talk about puzzle pieces, by the way, all of this would be brown, and all of this is blue, and all of this is green. And just like a puzzle, when we talk about transitioning, this transition is half green, half blue. Visually, this is the transition of the puzzle, right? I go from candidates to proposed changes. I go from one idea to the next. This is the transition within the paragraphs. And of course, within the triangles here, I'd have transitions too. So what I'm saying is, yeah, I want the thesis at the bottom, okay? The bottom of the introduction. In your case, it's the bottom of the introduction paragraph, but if I'm writing a longer essay, it's going to be at the bottom of the introduction in general. Now to the second idea, my other teacher said, I don't know who said that, and it's a good thing I didn't write it here because I'd call you out by name just like I did other people last time. Have you ever played sports? I bet your coaches hate hearing that other coaches told you blah, blah, blah. I don't freaking care. I'm your 1A teacher, and I'm responsible for your grade point average, not just at COD, but once you transfer. So I'm going to teach you what I know is a proven technique that will give you the best outcomes if you use it. If you don't use it, that's up to you. But what I'm teaching you works, and it's what's expected. Now, as you get better and you start really owning the material, can you move it up? I guess. I mean, the bottom is relative. If I'm doing a chapter and that chapter has 10 paragraphs, the bottom of the introduction might be the 8th or 9th paragraph. It doesn't have to be the last line of the 10th, right? So everything is relative when we say the bottom. But for our case, that is what I'm looking for, and your grade is dependent on following the template. Okay, here we go. The thesis could be anywhere in the introduction paragraph, or do you prefer to have it at the bottom? I just answered that. This is the conversation leading up to it. And in class, I use the example when you go to the bar, you're hanging out with people and you're trying to pick someone up. You don't say, hello, you wanna. You say, hello, how are you? You go through small talk and then you say, you wanna. So, you know, like, yeah, at the bottom, that's how life works. You do the thesis after you get to know someone. Let's see. I know you said only to write one purpose per essay, but in case where two purposes relate, would it be okay to use two overlapping ones? If you must, this is your essay. I'm not the writer, but again, don't mix purpose with adjective, right? And I can't really think of why you would need two, but if you feel like you do, okay. In a broad perspective of essay writing, are essays portraying the writer's perspective, or can it be fully unbiased and have no opinion and perspective toward the topic? We don't live in an unbiased world. Fact is based on observation, experience, and measurement, and even that is subjective. Is it hot outside? Well, it's 102. Well, that's not hot to me. But if I go to Canada and it's 70 outside, that's freezing to me and it's hot to them. So even the number is subjective. How we understand numbers is subjective. How we understand experience is subjective. Is it a good class, a bad class? It's totally subjective. I can't really think of anything in life that's not subjective. Can you? So you're always connecting to the topic on a personal level. The catch here is that you want to be detached enough to have your academic voice heard, your professional voice. I'm going to go back up to the question number 1. And let's try this again. It says it's not recommended to change our purpose every time. I don't personally recommend it. I have too many choices in life. And so for me, Friday night is always pizza and Sunday night is always homemade burgers. That's 2 nights a week I don't have to make a choice, right? And it makes my life simpler. If you choose to do a different purpose every essay, yay for you. If you choose to keep the same purpose and become very good at the structure that I'm teaching, you'll do better for it. I believe that expertise only comes with practice, and I personally don't have a lot of time to learn how to write 27 purposes, so I'd go for 1. It says, would you recommend us choosing one purpose to commit to along with the 2 I mentioned? The 2 I mentioned is actually 1. I write to prove my opinion is valid, and I do that through solid structure and evidence. Or I write to get A's through structure, and I do that through solid evidence. So I feel like I'm only committing to one purpose. Which purpose you commit to is up to you. It says in lecture 3, choosing topic purposes was explained, but do you have a particular writing style that you recommend? I don't actually even know what that means. I write to get an A. I use the template personally, just like I'm showing you here. This can grow or shrink. The 5 principles exist. Whether I'm doing 13 paragraphs, 60 paragraphs, or 5 paragraphs, it's the exact same essay for me. And so each one of these boxes could be a paragraph, or each one of these boxes could be a chapter, and I would be able to grow or shrink according to what I have to do. So my writing style, I guess what I would call is clear and to the point. And I try to always stay true to the self I pick and the opinion I pick, whether or not all of me agrees with it. I'm not going for a right answer, wrong answer. The problem with America right now is everyone thinks there is a right or wrong. Of course there's not. Within me is a very conservative Marine who loves guns. Within me is a liberal professor from California who understands that murder is wrong and nobody needs to have a 30 magazine clip to kill a bunch of people. Within me is a Marine who says it's a constitutional right to bear arms, and within me is a Marine who says if you can't shoot something with 1 bullet, you probably shouldn't own a gun, right? So that contradiction is within me. I'm not picking and choosing right and wrong. I'm just picking one voice, and I'm going to stick to it, and I write whatever essay comes. Next one, it says, for purpose, should we choose one that supports self and opinion? Seems as though the purpose if it doesn't sync with opinion, it would be a disaster. I can't think of any time that has ever happened to me. Because I write with structure as my core and proving my opinion is valid as my core, and I understand that everything in the universe is debatable to include that sentence. I'm not going after right and wrong, and I have no interest in converting people to any kind of belief system. I don't care what it is. I teach mythology. I believe in transference now. I don't care what God you choose or which era or continent it comes from. Have one. Yay for you. I don't care which political left or right you are, because the Constitution clearly says the president gets to stay for 4 years, and I believe in the Constitution. So good president, bad president is in the eye of the beholder, and it's not my business to debate that. So I've never had that happen, frankly. I pick a purpose to get an A, prove my opinion valid, and it doesn't contradict anything. How many purposes can we have in an essay? The answer to that is 1, please. I don't know why you would want or need more than 1. The next one says, do you think the essay would get too messy if we have more than 1? And I kind of just answered that. If you want to try to have more than 1, I guess you can. It's your essay. But the big question is why, right? It kind of reminds me of a sundae. Some people like loading it up with a bunch of crap. but then you end up with a mud pie and you throw half of it away because the flavors aren't differentiated. So I'm the kind of person who I want just a few flavors that I can actually enjoy and appreciate. And next time I come, I'll get the next ones if I want different ones. Essay, same thing. Don't make it mud. Would you recommend we choose a certain purpose and stick to it throughout the writing like you have? That really is up to you and the kind of personality you have. How many pieces are there to an essay? 27. Didn't we answer that? We have a title, we have a grabber, we have our framework, we have our thesis, topic sentence, example 1, example 2, example 3. This would actually be 6 examples, transition, but the same concept applies. 27 pieces to the essay, to the puzzle. Okay. Do you have to come up with a title right away, or can you start writing and return to it later? I very often start writing and I find my title at the end of the essay, and then I just bring back whatever line I close with becomes part of my title. And the title can be catchy, it can be inquisitive, it can be sarcastic, it can be in code. What it cannot be is in a different language if you don't translate it, by the way. I had a couple of those. The title doesn't have to make sense until the end, or it can be very straightforward. What I don't recommend is calling it essay number 1. Like, that's disgusting. It shows no interest, no effort. And it shouldn't probably be called education essay because that's my title for it, not your title for it, right? So be original. Let's see. Do we directly reference the audience of the essay or just in our heading? You can. I mean, in the body paragraphs, if my audience is Congress, I might bring up what Congress has done or what they should do or what they can do. Once it's stated, however, you don't have to keep repeating it, right? Once I tell you what we're having for dinner, I don't keep saying dinner, dinner, dinner. I don't say, we're having pizza for dinner. For pizza for dinner, we're having pepperoni. Our pizza for dinner is going to be, right? Like, I don't keep saying that. Once I say there's pizza and you say what kind, I just go on to explain what else is there. I'm not going to keep repeating the same word. Do you think it would be best to create your title first or create it after? Either way, if you create it first, it's a working title, and I do highly recommend once you finish to just go and refine so that they talk to each other. Same thing with grabber. Whatever you start with, question, fact, statistic, statement, humor, sarcasm, drama, dialogue, opinion, analogy, quote, and anecdote, and you have to know that by heart, by the way. Then your grabber echo, it's also going to want to talk back, right? So if you start with a question, give the answer. If you start with a quote, come back to the idea. A good example would be 6 out of 30 get their bachelor's degree on their first time. That means 24 out of 30 don't. And don't forget that the conclusion doesn't just have to be positive. You could show what happens negatively if somebody does or does not do what you've talked about. Which purpose is easier to write about? And this question lists the grabbers. Those grabbers are not purposes, right? Purpose is to persuade, inspire, instruct, debunk, disprove, entertain, analyze. Those are purposes. And frankly, I don't use any of them. How can we identify the audience on a specific prompt? The audience is not given to you on the prompt. You're picking your audience, especially on my prompt, right? Is being an educated member of one society important? Think about all the societies you're a part of, in your family, in your community. Are you on a sports team? Do you have a hobby? Do you have a friend group? Within those societies, what kind of education or knowledge do you either have or need? And in the next module, you fill in one of the 2 types of thesis statements. It says, how can we state or imply the 3 reasons within the thesis? Does it have to mention all of the 3 reasons? Or can we somehow give a common idea to those reasons and attach it within the thesis? Look, guys, the thesis is the GPS of the essay, and if you don't give us specific words, we have no way of knowing where we are in the essay. So the topic sentences are the street signs, and the order of those street signs, of course, matter to getting to the destination. But that thesis statement is the directions. Make a left on Monroe, a right on Requa, and stop at Oasis. if I give them to you in a different order or don't give you a starting point, you're not going to find COD and Indio. I can't just tell you, oh, go down Fred Waring and and then go left on Requa. Well, we skip Monroe and you'll never get there. So the thesis statement and those topic sentences act as the directions and the street signs, and they have to be where people can see them. They're the first thing we see and the last thing we see. We leave with the directions, we arrive at the street sign. We transition blinker to the next street sign. This matters a lot in terms of structure. How can I choose a title? We talked about it. Am I able to make up my own purpose like you? Of course. And should the purposes you provide be our motive for writing the essay? I don't care what purpose you choose, and I don't care what your motive is. You're in college because you have an idea about what you want your future to be. I recommend that motivation be your own and not given to you by someone else. And I recommend you put it down in paper, exactly how you want your future to turn out. According to that list, that's your motivation. I'm not your motivation. I could care less, frankly. What I do care about is that if you choose to be a student, you're successful. I don't want you to crash and burn. You don't want to be a student. That's not my business. You want to be a student. You want to be a successful student. That's where I come in. And my job is to make sure from this point on in this class until you graduate and leave COD, and then until you have your bachelor's degree and your master's degree and all the scholarships you can acquire and your career, well, then I'm out of the game, right? I've got a long journey ahead with you, and my job is to make sure that not just easy, but it's easy based on a technique that you can use and practice and become a master at. This is all for this essay. The next lecture will be about purpose and 5 principles.